Hi guys, how you doing? This is D Durrell with D Durrell Life Solutions. Today again, I'm going to be talking about issues as it relates to PPP loans and how to avoid audits, how to avoid investigations. Now, for myself, as you all know, and I've talked extensively about this, is that in the past year, um, actually, from 2020, I received government funding from the the EIDO loan, and I also received funding from the CARES Act in 2021. Also, within 2021, I received funds from the PPP loan. I only received one PPP loan, and so on. And also, just recently, I received funding towards the end of December, the middle end of December, from the CARES Act once again. Okay, in which I applied for that specifically by myself. For a lot of these government agencies, a lot of these government funding, I don't basically do the paperwork myself. I actually have professionals or a financial institution that does this for me. They are expensive. Yes, they are. They are very expensive. However, I'm looking at the fact that I don't have time to be doing this for myself, and I'd rather somebody that's a paid professional does this for me. And the fact that the likelihood is that I'm going to get approved 5 to 10 times more likely than doing it myself. That's facts. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to review an article with you all today. I have an article here in which I'm going to talk about how to avoid going to prison for your Paycheck Protection Program loan, advice from former federal prosecutors. This is not D. Durrell. This is according to Forbes. This is former federal prosecutors. Okay. Now, I'm going to point out some of the main things they're going to look at. Okay. And they list a variety of things. Okay. They're going to list reasons. Now, I want you all to understand what propelled them to do these investigations in the first place. We need to understand what caused them to want to do this in the first place, why they felt that this became a problem. And the problem is that people basically were getting funds with no business. And the government had learned about fraud relating to TARP, Katrina, other federal programs, from the past. Number two, they look at the fact that the signer of the certification is verifying the truth about the application. This is the person who completes this for you. It needs to be legitimately done and done by a legitimate person, and they're not lying. Next thing we want to look at is the primary focus of criminal prosecutions will be outright fraud, not incorrect, but genuine misinterpretation of the PPP, meaning that they're looking at people who are outright. It's not a matter of just the fact that you made honest mistakes. Let's just say you missed a few hundred here with a decimal point here and there. You may have said you had an LLC, but you had something else. It was just a matter of documentation mistakes. What they're looking at is just outright the fact that you lied, not the fact that you miss your documentation was not on point, or there was a mistake in the writing or the clarification. Is that you just damn right lied and you didn't have a business. That's what they're looking at. That the fact that there's no way in hell you should have gotten these funds based on your financial situation. You can't say you're an employee, but you're lying saying you're a contractor or a subcontractor. Just blatant lies. They're looking at blatant lies. That's what it boils down to. Number four, and they kind of clarified this a little bit more: employees versus independent contractors, kind of what I was just talking about. The fact that the rules for employees should not be getting PPP loans. Independent contractors, if you are an independent contractor, as an independent contractor, you can contract with other companies, but you have to have employees. You have to have employees. Okay, there are different laws about that. You have to be in line. You have to function within the bounds of the law. You cannot be an employee claiming you made $800,000 and got employed. How can you be an employee and have employees? Five, fraud and abuse will be a strong focus of the government post funding. Yes, they will be looking at those people who abused it, meaning that they got more money than what they should have, or they spent it on things. They say while the government will not be able to investigate every recipient, and of course every dollar amount, it's the degree of the fraud that matters. So initially, when I first talked about this, I looked at the dollar amounts as being what was more like fraud, but they're not looking at the dollar amounts. They're looking at the level in which you lied to get the money. It's a difference between you having a PLLC and it makes $300,000, but you missed and said it had maybe $650,000, as opposed to you just being a regular Joe Blow making $50,000 a year, and all of a sudden you just spontaneously have a business making 800,000 for 6, 7, $800,000. I'm sorry, that's just impossible. And when you file taxes, that $800,000 was not reflecting the tax rate of the taxes for whatever year that you're filing. Okay, number six, assume there will be random as well as targeted reviews of PPP recipients. Yes, it will be. Avoid any appearance of self-dealing. Prosecutors will be hyper attentive to related party transactions, meaning that self-dealing, meaning that you're basically dealing with you're not dealing with other people per se. You're doing things more in-house. You don't have the proper documentation to show. You just have things based on what you have without it having some type of paper trail to another entity. Meaning you're purchasing things and everything that you claim you bought, everything is in-house. Nothing is dealing with other people because you're lying. Next thing, number 8, the fraud problems may happen at any stage, including lies in the application process, assessing whether to take the loan if approved, spending of the funds, which is within the Black community, buying luxury items and things you don't need, vacations and etc. The next one, responding to government questions and updates. Again, you have to comply, responding to audits. In the previous video that I did about PPP loans, I talked about in the Black community the failure to comply with audits and investigations. Next thing, review all prior loans, lines of credit, applications, representation to landlords, um, decks shown to VCs. Your PPP loan application should be consistent with those prior representations. Again, and I talked about this, not only are we talking about credit cards, debit cards, bank accounts, other credit institutions that you may utilize for business loans and etc. We're talking about lines of credit, which I do have. We're also talking about rent. You should have if you own a building, you should have a mortgage or the note for that particular property. If you're renting, you should have a lease agreement. Those are all things that show that you're operating and functioning like a business. Next thing, if you are a startup in a highly regulated area, think hard about soliciting further government oversight. Many investigations are the result of an unrelated inquiry. If you do not really need the money, it may be wiser to take a pass. Exactly. If you don't need the money and your revenue is not showing decline, you're better off not taking it. And this is why they say optics matter, meaning how your business looks. Okay. What they're saying is that regulations and courts will not be sympathetic to recipients who are in any way perceived in taking advantage of these funds. As prosecutors, they prefer cases that there are clear evidence of greed, meaning there's no reason you should have this money. You're buying things, you're doing things that are not essential to your business surviving, not you just having a slush fund to do extra things. Make sure the money goes where it's supposed to. Spend it on the business. Consider having executives take a pay cut, or just basically consider having people taking pay cuts that are in your company. Now, what I'm going to say is this: for myself, I did not give my staff pay cuts, although they did have some level of reduction in hours worked, which actually was correlated to lesser pay than usual. And I slowly got it back up to where it typically was. Did the company in the last 12 months raise significant funds, pay large bonuses? Again, they're going to look at how the hell are you giving bonuses and all this other extra stuff and doing things you're supposed to be struggling. You should not be able to offer those things. If anything, you may be taking some things away. Okay. 6, avoid bad emails, Slack messages, no jokes about government funding. Don't brag about in any type of text message, email, or literature, even social media, about how you got this money and you fooled and took advantage of the government. That's crazy. Keep a low profile in regards to receiving the funds. If your company is named in the press or by Congress for abusing the intent of act, expect a government inquiry. Now, for myself, I did talk about the fact that how I receive government funds. I did it as a educational tool to help others realize that they can also be approved. I use it as a learning instrument for those that are struggling to get approved. I did not use it in a means of saying that I got over the government. I took money and I accepted money that I was approved for because my business suffered major reductions. I had a location that closed down. I actually had a lack of uh, walk-in flow in my outpatient program, and I also didn't have a government contract that I end up losing due to COVID, and also another thing that happened is that I had another school contract that I was not able to capitalize on based on COVID-19. So I hope I shed a little light on what they're looking at. I appreciate you all for being here. This is D Durrell with D Durrell Life Solutions. Basically, here talking about what are prosecutors looking at. And I kind of pointed out a few things because they're basically looking at if you are just basically in your face, blatantly taking money, boasting about it, and misusing it in ways that you shouldn't. Now, I want each and every one of you to have a great day. This is D Durrell with D Durrell